Hey guys, it's Abby from Portsmouth Pellinor, and today I'm going to be talking about Charles Dickens. Now there is a reason for this video, rather than just being completely random. As I'm sure you know, Charles Dickens is a very well-known British author from the 1800s, and until I moved here I didn't know that he was actually born in Portsmouth, which is the city I'm in to do my master's degree. There is actually the museum of his birthplace here, but it doesn't reopen again until the summer, and it has two open days in the winter. One was around Christmas and I was at home, and one is coming up, but I'm revising for exams. So instead I thought I had been planning on taking you guys around and showing you it. Maybe I'll do that in the future, but right now I thought I'd just share some facts about him. So Charles was born on the 7th of February 1812 to John and Elizabeth Dickens. Elizabeth had a brother who was an author and another one who was a playwright or something similar. I can't remember exactly. So he was born into a wealthy family that encouraged literature, which probably is a very big determining factor as to why he's an author. He didn't actually stay in Portsmouth for very long. They moved just before he turned 3, closer to London because of his father's job. But he has returned to Portsmouth multiple times, and the city seemed to hold a certain place in his heart. This might have been because at the time Portsmouth was described as a little London. It's definitely not anymore. London is a very busy metropolis. Portsmouth is a city. It's just a city. But at the time it was Little London, so they had the same issues and the same sort of population problems, meaning that they had the same poverty problems. So back in the 1800s you had the workhouses. There was a drastic difference between rich and poor, and Charles Dickens, if you didn't know, which I'm mildly surprised if you know anything about the man, was very against this level of poverty and not helping out those who need it. So he actually ended up writing A Christmas Carol to raise awareness of the issue of poverty. So he had been going to write just an article for people to read, and then he realised that he would be able to reach a wider audience by writing a novella. So he wrote this 100-page book about a character called Scrooge. If you've never read A Christmas Carol or watched any of its adaptations, we follow a man called Scrooge, who is where we get the term Scrooge from, I believe. If I'm wrong, then that's why he's called Scrooge. And he scrimps every penny. He barely puts enough coal on the fire to keep himself warm or his employee, who isn't treated very well. And he's visited by 3 ghosts: the ghosts of Christmas past, Christmas present and Christmas future. And they show him who he used to be, what's going on around him now, and what will happen to him in the future. And this shocks Scrooge and makes him realise the error of his ways, makes him realise that there is no point hoarding away all this money when he has no friends, no people who will mourn him when he goes, and he could make a real difference with his money now, rather than just passing it on to someone else who only cares about collecting it. And so by the end of this story, Scrooge has been a changed man. This all took place very quickly. I think it's over one night. So he doesn't miss Christmas Day, and he's able to actually make an impact on his community and help those who need it. And this story was received, as you probably know, very well by everybody. He did later also write Oliver Twist, and Oliver Twist is all about a poor orphan boy and his life. So we see him in the poorhouse. Please sir, may I have some more? We see him stealing to survive, and we see the progression of that story. So he was very much pro helping out those who could not afford to help themselves, who could not afford to feed their families or pay the bills or have enough heating or have enough candles for light. And he actually made sure that a certain quantity of the tickets for every one of his events were at a very discounted price, meaning that the poorer classes and the working class could attend these. So yes, he did actually hold author events, pretty much like we do now. He would sit, like he would be somewhere and he would read out some of his work. People would ask him questions and things like that, and he charged for these. I don't know whether this went towards his publishers or him or what, but he made sure that there was a decent number of tickets that were a lot cheaper. And in those days, like nowadays, I can imagine quite a few people paying the cheaper price, even if they did have the money, whereas back in those days that would have been seen as you admitting that you couldn't afford to pay more, and that would lower your social standing if you were in the upper classes. So those in the upper classes would be like, oh yes, we'll pay for the like extra expensive ticket, and there was enough tickets left for the poor people. I mean, I'm sure there were some horrible people who did pay the cheap ticket price for no reason, but I don't think it was as prevalent as it would be today, which is probably partly because of the massive drastic split and the social stigma at the time, which was a lot worse than it is today. And the last point I'm going to mention about him in this video is that the first ever statue of him is actually here in Portsmouth, in our Guildhall town centre plaza area. I will insert a photo here. This isn't my photo, I've taken it from The Independent and I've linked the article down below, so full credit to that photographer. This is just to show you what it looks like. And I didn't have time to go out and get a picture of it. But yes, he actually stated explicitly in his will that he didn't want any statues of himself. There's a few various reasons for that, but on his 202nd birthday, they did put up a statue of him in the centre of Portsmouth, and although it goes against his wishes, I don't know, it's difficult because obviously so much time has passed. He would not have known that he was going to be such a figure so far on in the future, so there's no real way to know how he would have felt about this, but he did state as well that he didn't want it. So, but yes, if you do ever come to Portsmouth, you can go and see the Charles Dickens Museum, which is actually in the house that he was born and raised in for the first couple years of his life. I will leave the link to the website for that museum down below, along with an article that I used to get most of this information, and also the article to The Independent where I got the photo of Charles Dickens' statue from. So yeah, that's just a quick little video, something different to what I normally do, but I thought, seeing as I am in the city that Charles Dickens was born in, this is something I really should talk about. I have only read so far A Christmas Carol. I've read bits of Great Expectations, but never the whole thing, and I'm not sure why, so I will eventually actually just read it. I don't even know if I own it, I read it in school. But I do intend to read his books, they're just not the top of my priority list. Maybe they should be. I will one day. But yes, let me know if you've read any of Charles Dickens' books, if there's any ones you specifically recommend that you believe are better than the rest, and let me know if you knew any of this stuff about Charles Dickens, or if any famous old-time authors or famous current authors came from where you live currently or where you've been. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to me ramble on. All of my social media links are down in the description below, and make sure to hit the red subscribe button if you want to see some more from me in the future. Thank you for watching, guys. Bye!